Thank you everyone for joining us. We're very excited to be marking this World Earth Day celebration with a side event on blending technology and with nature conservation and sustainable development as one of the side events of the 80th session of the Economic and Social Commission for the Asia and Pacific. This specific side event is organized by IUCN Asia and RECOF. I'm Ariella McDonald, Communications Officer at IUCN Asia. And I'll be emceeing today. But just before we get started, I'll go over just a few housekeeping rules. So just to note that this session is being recorded and the link will be available on our IUCN Asia YouTube channel afterwards. And we kindly request that all your mics are muted unless you're presenting, but the chat box is open, so please feel free to introduce yourselves. And there'll also be an opportunity for Q&A after each of the presentations during the panel discussion. So please feel free to use the chat box throughout the webinar. And I think with that, we can get started. So over the next hour, we'll be exploring how IUCN and our partners have tapped into GIS, predictive modeling, AI, among others, for more efficient conservation work. This side event really focuses on providing an overview of the role of technology in fostering transparency, supporting informed decision-making, and facilitating field implementation in nature conservation, as well as showcasing how technological innovations have been applied in addressing key biodiversity, climate, and environmental challenges. And finally, we have some panelists who will be sharing some very relevant examples of collaborative initiatives with leading partners from business, academic, and research sectors. So before we get started, we'd like to open with recorded remarks from Dindo Kampulan, who is IUCN's Asia Regional Director.
I'm pleased to welcome all of you to this side event, which focuses on applying technology to conserve nature and biodiversity, and ultimately contributing to the achievement of Sustainable Development Goals. A word of thanks to the UN ESCAP for hosting this side event as part of the 80th Commission session, and to RECOFTC for organizing this webinar. The Regional Community Forestry Training Center, RECOFTC, based here in Bangkok, has been a valued member of IUCN since 1995. This is the second year for IUCN to organize a side event during the ESCAP Commission sessions, as a key initiative under the ESCAP IUCN MOU Partnership Agreement. Last year, we had the honor to co-organize a side event with the Embassy of Japan in Thailand and ESCAP, exploring opportunities to design and implement nature-based solutions for climate adaptation at scale and its policy mainstreaming. This year's Commission session takes the overall theme, leveraging digital innovation for sustainable development in Asia and the Pacific. Along with other sectors, nature and biodiversity conservation offers novel and impactful cases in the application of technology, digital, and related innovations, which this side event seeks to showcase. As a recent example, at the Climate COP in Dubai, IUCN launched the Act 30 initiative, which brings together a broad network of scientific, indigenous peoples, and private sector organizations, including ISRI. Act 30 illustrates harnessing the best of science, technology, and local knowledge in helping governments chart an effective and fair pathway to conserving key biodiversity areas in and across countries. I'm pleased that Mr. David Gadsden, ISRI's Head of Conservation, is joining us to describe this exciting partnership. Throughout this webinar, we will learn of many examples shared by our panel of speakers, including from IUCN Asia and Oceania and our private sector partners, Kumi Analytics and Drone Entry, on current practices and future prospects in the use of diverse remote sensing, geospatial, and digital technologies. We will hear how technological innovation in Asia and the Pacific is helping reimagine and reshape the conservation of high-value, high-risk biodiversity in major ecosystems, from forests and protected areas to wetlands and coastal areas. In embracing these technological advances as part of nature-based solutions, we move closer, quicker, and better towards achieving the goals and targets of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, as well as globally agreed targets under the climate and other multilateral environmental agreements. We hope this event would stimulate further partnership among us in working towards our shared vision to realize a world that values and conserves nature. Kapun ka.
Thank you, Dindo, for your opening remarks. And now to set the tone for the panel discussion, I'd like to welcome Khalid, Coordinator of Protected and Conserved Areas at IUCN Asia, for his presentation on why technology is a key component of nature conservation. Khalid, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ariella. And welcome to you all for this webinar, especially side event on blending the technology with other nature conservation and other sectors. The integration of the technology in nature conservation not only improves our understanding of ecosystems and biodiversity, but also enhances our ability to protect and manage natural resources sustainably. By leveraging technology and collaborating across sectors, organizations like IUCN are driving forward the use of innovative solutions to address the challenges facing our planet's biodiversity. And in this regard, I will be now quickly taking you through some of the experiences and also introducing you to what the future lies ahead and some of our experts, what they would be discussing. And before I go ahead, it's being recognized across the globe that for nature conservation to really strive forward and to take it in the strides like other sectors, we need to really speed up the uptake of the technology. Identifying conservation technology needs barriers and opportunities. There's a lot of publications which have come up recently. There are publications which are in the peer-reviewed journals now looking at how we can make the best of the use of technology, not only in nature conservation, but also to connect it with the allied sectors. And some of the key questions today, our panelists would be helping to answer us, and also we need to look in future, are listed here. And among them, when we talk about data automation technology, finding the right kind of technology, how do we scale it up, and the resources which would be available for scaling up technology, level of capacity for understanding technology, how does it really help in contributing towards the global goals and the targets, how to make technology in nature conservation more transparent, basically to bring the systems transparency, accountability, and making conservation as an evidence-based process. Technology also needed for increasing the efficiency of nature conservation and management, identifying the right technologies for ensuring fair and effective nature and biodiversity conservation, looking at the technology used for climate impact and other threats for area-based conservation. One also of the biggest problem when in our sector of the nature conservation is, apart as we see a huge boom and the burst of technology like the remote sensing and the camera traps and geo-enabling tools, but when it comes to really basic operations on ground, we are still too much tied up with the pen and paper. There are too many custodians holding the information. How do we bring this data with multiple custodians into a one central location? How do we really help our management on the ground, not only just operating with the smart patrolling and other technological aids, but in terms of day-to-day life, how do we really catalyze management actions which can really help us to keep up the speed with other sectors? And when I say other sectors, especially the sectors like in agriculture, looking at the linear infrastructure, looking at the mining, looking at other allied sectors which really are also competing with the nature conservation hand in hand. And the use of technology is much more advanced in those sectors. A recent survey carried out to really look at the use of the technology, as I just said few seconds back, it is largely relying still and tilted towards using the camera traps, GIS and remote sensing, computer visions, and now to a certain extent, some mobile apps which are emerging, data management tools, looking at other methodologies, UAVs and drones. But we also need to go beyond this, as I said, and how do we start integrating the nature conservation with the other sectors? That would be something very meaningful for us. And towards that strive, IUCN has been trying to advance and make forward the steps in integrating the technology. Act 30 is one of the initiatives for IUCN to advance the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. And we have partnered with IIFB and ESRI. ESRI is well-known geospatial enabling tool providers. This is also helping us to develop a multiple criteria for analysis to meet conservation objectives. It will provide us with an integrated dashboard. IUCN also is partnering with other technological partners in an initiative called Tech for Nature, which is designed as an open partnership to apply and promote digital solutions for fair and effective protected area work. And here we are using the Green List, which is one of the global standards for IUCN for sustainability in terms of the governance and effective management of protected areas. The Contributions for Nature platform by IUCN overlays the data for biodiversity and for nature-based solutions to climate change. This allows IUCN constituents to document their intended contributions to other conservation frameworks and agreements, such as Global Biodiversity Framework, Paris Agreement, and UN Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. Well, to focus on today's side event, we are trying to look at three main objectives: present a view of the role of technology in nature conservation through fostering transparency, supporting informed decision-making, and facilitating field implementation. Secondly, showcase technological innovations which have been applied in addressing key biodiversity, climate, and environmental challenges. And lastly, share relevant examples of collaborative initiatives with leading technological partners from business, academic, and research sectors. In a strive towards that, now we will be hearing from our eminent panelists, which includes Pete Cutter, Clinton Libby, Donald Usang, John, and David Gatson. I will just hand it over back to Ariella for further deliberations. Thank you so much.
Now, before we get into the panel discussions, just a gentle reminder that there will be a Q&A ask each of the panelists questions, so please feel free to drop them into the chat as they're presenting. And now I'll be handing over to Josepe Terai, Stakeholder Engagement and Communication Officer at IUCN Asia, who is moderating the panel discussion. To you, Josepe.
Okay, hello everyone. Thank you, Ariella, for the introduction. I hope everybody can see and hear me. Like I've been introduced, my name is Kosuke Terai. I'm working as the Regional Stakeholder Engagement and Communications Officer based at IUCN Asia in Bangkok. And we are very excited to have you all join this wonderful event with the distinguished panelists. And I'm sure that my colleague Khalid, and also Dindo, the regional director's remarks have already given you a set the tone, if I may, on what to come. And so now it's time for us to delve into the great examples that are developed, that are implemented on the ground, and for us to know how we can possibly make a better connection between conservation and the technologies that are rapidly advancing. So with that said, I will first hand it over to Dr. Peter Cutter, Director of Program Coordination and Technical Services at RECOF. Pete, if I may hand over to you, please.
Thanks very much, Kosuke. Let me just share my screen. Just a moment. Okay, hopefully you're beginning to see my first slide. If not, please let me know.
Yes, we can see clearly.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for joining this session. Acknowledging that the time is limited for all of us here, and anticipating some discussion of the application of specific technologies in the sessions that follow mine. I wanted to begin with sharing some lessons learned in some of my recent roles with regard to leveraging technology for conservation and development. The first that I'll discuss reflects a central perspective of RECOFT, the organization that I now work at, as we collaborate with local communities as a central part of our work. And the second comes from my time as Surveyor Mekong Science and Data Co-Lead during the first years of this program in Southeast Asia, when it was actually called Surveyor Mekong. It's now has an expanded geography and is thankfully called Surveyor Southeast Asia. So on to the next slide. At RECOFT, almost every project we undertake is based on a systematic process of understanding the needs of the individuals or communities we're working with. The lesson from years of such work at RECOFT is that to identify the most effective solutions to complex challenges, and these often include various technologies, it's really best to understand the issues, perspectives, needs, and context directly from the stakeholders that will be using the tools and benefiting from the tools, rather than transferring solutions and assumptions from another context, which, even if it seems very closely related, may not always be the best fit. One key reason for this is that even if external context is very similar, the composition of communities and groups within those communities can vary dramatically, and their needs and interests with regard to the application of a certain technology can really vary. So it's the interplay of this composition and the external context that really often defines what approach to take and what's going to be most effective. So we at RECOFT, we often begin our work with a very structured capacity development needs assessment or a technology needs assessment, where we plan an engagement with the target community that is really geared to understanding exactly their need and having them be able to express it on their own terms, so that as we deliver, whether it's capacity building or a new technology solution that we collaborate with them on, we're understanding the full context of the challenge directly from the user. And this goes a lot better than trying to second guess what might be best for their particular condition. So I'll really leave the first point at that. It's really just, again, to summarize, try to avoid making assumptions about who's going to be benefiting from a technology, and really try to get it directly from the perspective of those stakeholders. I think the ultimate end value of what's delivered is going to be a lot higher. So the second set of considerations that I want to cover briefly in blending technology with conservation and development comes from a very structured process followed by the Surveyor program. For those of you that may not know, Surveyor is a collaboration of USAID and NASA. It has hubs around the world that serve developing countries and with solutions to complex problems, often leveraging remote sensing data and other technology that blends with that. So RECOFT has now formally partnered with Surveyor to help fulfill Surveyor's mission of connecting space to village in this region of the world. Surveyor's approach in turn reflects a system used in the development of all NASA projects to ensure that data products, services, or other solutions deliver their intended value to the end users. Within the Surveyor context, this process is guided by a service planning toolkit, which you can Google and take advantage of. It's open source on the web, which, among many other aspects of solution development, it includes really deep guidance on the points that I've highlighted in this slide and some really practical, even to the level of documents and templates that you can use for making sure that your solution and the technologies that you're thinking of applying really hit the mark when it comes to end users. I've talked about some of the first bullets here in my first slide, so I just want to focus on maybe the last two to emphasize again the point of keeping end users at the center of technology application and development. One thing that we often see in RECOFT and certainly saw in the Severe program is that we can envision a solution, and often we assume our own capacity and our own perspective into that context, and that's a big risk, because in almost all cases the recipient group or the group that we're collaborating with have capacity needs, or they're at a different level of capacity than we might be. So it's very important to understand, along with the actual creation of the technology, what sort of capacity building might be needed for people to use it effectively for their need. And then the last point I'll make is simply that, keeping actual users at the center of what hopefully is an iterative development. I think in most of the cases that we deal with in conservation and development, we're dealing with extremely complex problems, and the solutions can only really be truly developed effectively if there is an iterative process. And I think setting out from the start a roadmap that allows for end users to actually, try the product, provide feedback, and really embed it in their need is going to work best. So that idea of iterative development and refinement. And with that, I'll close up my comments. I really just wanted to set the stage that as we go into this endeavor of linking need with various technologies, it's a really good idea to keep the end users at the center of that process. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Pete, for setting the tone, as you said, and for making great context for our discussions on how to link technology and nature conservation. Indeed, as you said, Pete, keeping end users at the center when we're thinking of applications of technology is of course a must, but we can and we tend to forget about that. That tends to fall off the main scope of because when we encounter some new technology, we tend to think, okay, so how can we let's adopt it for the sake of adopting, and we tend to misjudge or misassume, if you may, what the potential benefits are and what the beneficiaries might need in terms of extra capacity building for us to effectively implement that on the ground. So I think that was a very nice overview of what to come. So thank you so much again. And right, and with that said, I'd like to now turn the floor to Mr. Donald Uksang, President Business Development at Drone Entry. Donald-san, are you with us?
Yes, Kosuke-san, thank you. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. In today's presentation, we will look into the bigger picture of space technology applications and then delve into the use of drone technology for nature conservation and sustainable development. And let me share my slides. Okay, can you see the screen?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Okay, thank you. So my name is Donald Uksang, representing Drone Entry, which is a fully integrated drone innovation company, which specializes in various aspects of drone technology, including comprehensive training courses, drone as a service solutions, cutting-edge drone satellite software and analytics, as well as drone manufacturing. There are three pillars in space technology applications, and the first is Global Positioning System, or GPS. where it provides geolocation and time information to a GPS receiver on any part of the Earth. The second is Geographic Information System, or GIS, which analyzes and displays information with unique information. It answers questions such as how big is a national park, or what are the locations of watering holes. The third is remote sensing, which is the science of obtaining information about objects or areas from a distance. And typically they come from spaceborne satellites and aircrafts. In this case, we are specific on the drone technology. And the third platform is on terrestrial using mobile mapping systems. A drone can carry multiple payloads at any given mission, from RGB camera for forest resource assessment to multiple sensor cameras for vegetation health monitoring, a LiDAR sensor for generating 3D models of natural landscape. On top of the various camera sensors, drones are used in logistics with specially designed delivery kits. Also, drones can be equipped with floodlight for emergency rescue services, or a megaphone for public announcement services, or for mimicking sounds of wildlife of interest. Drones are used in vulnerability mapping, and in this sense, a drone can be valuable tools for surveying expansive land resources, which are equipped with variety of sensors. These drones collect raw data that are subsequently processed and analyzed. For instance, drones are utilized to generate 3D models, facilitating the assessment of slope stability in rugged terrains. Furthermore, drone data is leveraged to generate thematic map layers, which can be integrated into models for mapping high-risk areas such as fire-prone forested lands, flood-prone zones, earthquake epicenters, cyclone-prone regions, and other similar areas of concern. In forestry, drone missions are carried out in forest resource mapping and inventory, identifying different species of forest trees, counting forest stands, and analyzing canopy data such as tree heights and crown sizes. Equipped with thermal sensors, drones are used to identify fire hotspots and monitor scorched forest stands and extreme drought events. Drone flights are also carried out to identify areas for deforestation or afforestation. Data collected from drones are analyzed in a GIS to demonstrate or demarcate forest boundaries. Also using a GIS, maps are prepared for allocation of plots to social forestry stakeholders. Drones play an important role in forest resource inventory and in collecting information such as crown size for estimating the age of trees. As with agricultural crops, drones are deployed to assess the health of forest reserves and conservation areas by calculating vegetation indices from drone data. The results then provide key indication of the vegetation's overall health, its greenness, and stress from water deficiency and pests. In urban environment, drones are used in aiding green infrastructure planning and in modeling of digital twins for strategizing nature-based solutions. Drones are also used in vulnerability mapping for managing conservation areas in times of disaster from extreme weather events, forest fires, and other emergencies. Live video coverage during severe flooding provides real-time information to decision makers and wildlife conservation rescue teams for informed response actions. Logistic deliveries of needed supplies can be facilitated using drones especially to communities and conservation areas cut off as a result of extreme events. In wetlands, drone flights with sonar sounder are conducted for bathymetric mapping and 3D modeling of wetlands and lakes. The results are used in wetland conservation planning and management. Drone surveys at different time intervals provide spatial and temporal change information of important conservation areas on water and land environments for appropriate environmental actions. Finally, Drone Entry offers off-the-shelf and customized drone-centric courses to build capacity of experts and on-the-ground personnel on the use of drone technology for nature conservation and sustainable development. You can contact Drone Entry at this address or reach out to me on my email and mobile number for additional information. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Donald-san, for the very nice presentation. And I actually was very delighted to that you were able to delve into one of the topics that we discussed earlier based on Pete's presentation, which was how to make sure that there's enough capacity building involved for technology applications, right? Suppose like we all know what drones are, and we have some sort of understanding of what kind of things that drones can be used for. But when it comes to reality, can we already have, can we just go to national parks or protected and conserved areas at just one given day and just give the drones to the rangers and expect them to start utilizing it from day one? That's pretty not likely. So it's very nice to see that capacity building for drones is one of your areas of expertise, Donald-san, and we look forward to the possibility of collaborating further in the future to make sure that there's enough of drone literacy, if you may, for better application in nature conservation. Thank you so much. All right, and with that said, I would like to now turn the floor to Mr. Clinton Libby, co-founder at Kumi Analytics. Clinton, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. I'm just going to share my screen. All right, so Clinton Libby, Kumi Analytics. I'm a co-founder and managing director. A little bit about me. I've been in the remote sensing industry for about 30 years. And I've worked with in a range of areas, everything from launching satellites, setting up ground stations, to building hazard monitoring systems. I spent before starting Kumi Analytics, working with Google, the last 8 years there, and really working as to how we can take the very complex technology and make it available to the masses. And I think that was a great experience doing that with Google. And now I'm working with Kumi to do that for nature-based solutions. And in particular, one of the key points of the title of this slide is improve impact. And the way that we can do that is by making it more accessible to broad users. So satellite imagery, as you just heard in the previous discussion, really enables a robust, reliable, space-based assessments of the state of forests. In order to really have a positive impact, we need to make sure that the work that we're doing with this data provides high accuracy and also transparency, enable others to see the work and have access to it. It also needs to be scalable. When we're building out solutions, we want to be able to do this for very large areas. And so it's really important for us to be able to cover hundreds of thousands of hectares, and remote sensing data will do that. It also provides us speed, so we can literally capture data for an entire forested area in a single day using satellite imagery. And last but not least, it's incredibly cost effective when we work with it properly. I mentioned a little bit about the broad area analysis. When we think about the ability to survey a forest, and if you look at IUCN's Restoration Opportunities Assessment Methodology, or also known as ROAM, it's really important for us to understand the entire area of the project. And this type of data will enable us to do that. So we could look at the areas where there are certain bare areas or areas where certain species of trees are. This all will lower the validation costs and when we're looking at a project rather than a lot of field surveys. And it allows us to do it very fast and accurately. We can also do things like measure deforestation and do land use classification. Once again, another thing that is part of the IUCN's Rome methodology, understanding what is happening on the land in different neighborhoods and different parts of the forest or ecosystem, I should say. And so we can identify urban areas, we can identify plantations, forests, agricultural fields, aquaculture, and how that changes over time. So we can look at what is the shift from forest to what land use, and then explore how we may be able to change that pattern from continuing to happen. Likewise, we can look at different forest types, and I have a few examples here. Whether it's a swamp forest, a mangrove forest, a tropical forest, we can identify different forest types, different land uses, and all of this in order to better understand how we can have maximum impact on conserving the forests and for generations to come. Carbon is a popular thing these days as well. It's a good measure, and being able to capture carbon is important. And so understanding what the carbon stock of a forest is as well, through the integration of remote sensing, machine learning models, and ground observations, we can estimate carbon stocks. And this is an example of a project that we worked on in Indonesia, which basically represents about a little over 3 million tons of carbon in the stock. Likewise, we can see how that has changed over time. So if we wanted to look at state change analysis and say how much impact has our project had, how much additional carbon has been captured, or what percentage of the land has shifted from, say, bare areas to forest, we can do that also with satellite imagery. And probably one of the most important things, which Peter talked about early on in the discussion, was enabling transparency and making sure that people are able to get access to all the information and all of the data and be able to visualize that data themselves and see the impact, which really enables us to avoid any allegations of greenwashing. Now, one of the challenges that was brought up earlier is making it available to the community leaders and the participants in these projects. The fact of the matter is, technology for the sake of technology, it's not going to really do anything. We really have to bring it and make it available and easily accessible to broad users and with all due respect, unsophisticated users. They're not remote sensing scientists, but they want to participate and do something positive and working in the field. I like this question that I have on this is, do you want that data radiometrically corrected, georectified, orthorectified? Even being in the satellite imagery industry for 30 years, on a project recently, I said, they started asking me some of these questions. I said, hold on, let me go talk to my lead scientist. And that's after being in the space for 30 years. If we expect people that haven't worked with satellite imagery to be able to answer these questions and understand all the various options, we're going to basically provide them a tool that's not usable. So it's really important for us to do that and make it super easy and to democratize the technology. Provide multiple use cases, accessing lots of different databases, have complex algorithms to analyze the data and provide that to them rapidly and to very easily accessible tools that they can take advantage of. We have to take the mystery out of remote sensing, unlock the applications, and automate the process so that we give them the answers that they need in order to take action and to preserve and conserve the forests today. And with that, I would thank you very much for your time and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Clinton, for the wonderful presentation. I too really liked the question that you had there, and I was scared that you were gonna ask this to one of our participants, but good that, yeah. And I really Yeah, second your opinion about the need to democratize solutions. And I'm already seeing some examples of how we can do that through our panelists' presentation. So I really love the focus that we're all seeing here in this room already. So thank you so much for the presentation. Yes, and right, and for the two next panelists, we will be presenting videos, two in a row. The first will be from Mr. John Kaitu, GIS officer at IUCN Oceania Regional Office. And please note that we're showing this video lest the internet connections with the Oceania office may get spotty. But please rest assured that Mr. John Kaitu is with us in this room right now. So if you have any questions from the video or anything you want to ask about Oceania, please feel free to join. And hi, John, great to see you. And after that, I'll also be playing a video from Mr. David Gatswin, who heads the conservation sector in ESRI, which has been IUCN's partner for a long time with regard to applying technology for conservation priorities. So yes, so please join me in watching the two videos, and I will be sharing them now.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for this opportunity. My name is John Kaitu, and I will be presenting to you on behalf of IUCN and some of the work that we do across Oceania in more detail on marine spatial plans. Now, that being said, acknowledging our theme for this event is blending technology with nature, conservation, and sustainable development. The map in front of you shows the different countries that are currently undergoing marine spatial plan in the Pacific. Also, I would like to acknowledge the different governments as well as partners that we work on within this space. Now, none of this work would have been possible without them. In terms of the different countries that are currently undergoing MSP, you can see them highlighted in red. More importantly, you can see their different national targets in terms of the yellow. Now, this serves a purpose in terms of EZ scale versus countryside. And I make reference to two countries which we'll be using for this presentation, which is the Solomon Islands, which is 15%, and Samoa being 30%. You can see the difference in the size of EEZs. Now keep that in mind. In terms of using technology and conservation, knowledge is power, and knowledge in this sense being data or information. Now, as you can see, this is a cross-section of the entire Southwest Pacific, as well as an overlay of all the different types of data sets that we've been able to collect. This is both uses as well as values in terms of different habitats and so forth. As we start to look at things in a finer detail of a national scale, you can see that there's so much going on a national scale. It gets even busier when we go into the inshore space, but for now, we'll look at the national level from an EZ scale. Over the span of the project, we've got 116 data sets respectively, and then you can see the different categories in which they're broken down into. And these are the data sets that went into the marine spatial plan. Technology has evolved so much where we're able to capture all of this. But regional data sets is not where, isn't the end of all things. You need to be able to supplement this with national or ground level data. And it comes down to stakeholder engagement across different sectors, different levels, whether it be government, private, or community level. And they all play an important role, but there has to be an efficient way to do it. As you can see, the left-hand side of your screen in green is the conventional way of using paper-based maps. Now, cutting down on printing, we were able to make this more efficient in collaboration with McClintock Labs and Conservation International. Examples that you can see in Samoa, where we've managed to make it more hybrid, facilitators using online surveys with offline capability. Now that you've seen where all the data comes from, a lot of times people ask, what happens to all that data? There are 3 steps to this. And in the essence of time, we won't go into the whole thing, but in overall, you've seen the maps, how we use the information in terms of biological information, uses information, but we have to be able to understand our targets. We know that one country has 15, one country has 30%. With that being said, what are they looking at in terms of what does make up? Are we looking at mangroves, reefs, coral reefs, and so forth? With all this data, we have to be able to process it all at once to get a realistic picture of what's going on in our ocean space. And we use a design support tool or decision supporting tool in this case. The decision support tool crunches all this data with all these targets, and it's able to put out two scenarios that you see in front of you. What you have in front of you is called a frequency map or priority map, as technical teams have come to name them. So Samoa being on the left, Solomon Islands being on the right. With this, the red and the blues are not what you're looking for. The takeaway message from this is the darker the color, the higher the priority in terms of meeting your targets. The lighter the color, the lower the priority. The underpinning message here is we know that all spaces across our ocean are important, but in terms of the scarcity of resources, in terms of monitoring, this is where we are able to meet the most targets within the shortest amount of time or with the scarce resources that we have at our availability. Now, with that being said, we look at the next slide. There's a plethora of information and scientific peer-reviewed guidelines that IUCN has put together when it comes to mapping out marine protected areas within the offshore space. Also giving credit to the green list as well as the red list and protected areas programs that we have. Now, I won't take you through every bit of detail, but what it boils down to is the map that you see in front of you. Are we protecting enough of the colors that you see? Reds being canyons, orange being seamounts, grays being abyssal plains and all. But if your answer is yes, then you have a network of ecological representation. If your answer is no, then you still need work to be done. Now, moving on to the next slide, once we have our network, or our latest network, such as Solomon Islands, we're able to use this in terms of stakeholder consultation and look at the different targets that we're able to achieve. Now, to wrap up, I'd like to wrap up with this slide here from Samoa. The green that you see, or the shades of green in the background, are your priority areas. Darker meaning higher priority, lighter meaning lower priority. The difference is you'll see that there's red hotspots on the map. The red meaning highly used economic spaces in this case. This means that as time passed, you can see the different ways that the network has evolved from zero draft, draft 1.1 and 1.2. The purple being the drafts, by the way. Now, based on the information and the knowledge and the data, you can see that it's evolved over time. But the key is to find balance. It boils down to balance at the end of the day. And it's a give and take process, but it must be driven through informed decisions and a stakeholder inclusive process. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. I'm David Gadsden. I'm the Director of Conservation Solutions at ESRI, and I apologize that I'm unable to join you in real time, but I'm very interested in the meeting that you're having, and I hope that I can provide some contributions around ESRI's work on conservation, mapping technologies, and our support for Act 30. ESRI was founded in 1969 by Jack and Laura Dangerman. Our focus for now 54 years has been geographic information systems technology. ESRI was involved in the very beginning of computing systems to represent the real world, and now serves a vast global community of organizations in nearly every industry that are leveraging these technologies to advance their operations and understanding of the world around them. Each of those organizations appreciate that geography and the relationships in space are fundamental to the work that they're doing. And this could not be more true for conservation, where protected areas are facing many pressures from forces that are in and around these protected areas and playing out across landscapes. Of course, today, with the reality of climate change, every place in the world is facing some type of challenge and requires some type of adaptation to adapt to this changing world. Geography is a fundamental component of that thinking, and these technologies help bring those concepts to life through meaningful applications. Esri's technology is increasingly available in a cloud computing environment, which allows applications to be appropriately shared with different users across potentially large systems, both large and small. That means that not everyone has to learn the advanced GIS technology. They can simply interact with these focused applications, which allow them to accomplish their work, whether that's collecting data, visualizing data, or better analyzing trends and patterns that are playing out over space. A lot of work has been done to date on the concept of 30 by 30, setting aside appropriate areas to reach that target, now target 3 under the Global Biodiversity Framework. Esri was involved early on in the support for the state of California and their 30 by 30 initiative, and that involved creating a set of these applications that leveraged data from the state data from the federal government, nonprofits, and other partners into a collective set of applications to explore not only progress towards the targets, but biodiversity data in detail, as well as climate scenarios in detail. That collection of applications now supports local dialogues around 30 by 30 in the state of California. In addition, our colleagues in Panama, Ecuador, and Colombia have developed a 30 by 30 framework which supports apps and collaboration and capacity building around initiatives around Target 3 in those countries as well. So building upon that knowledge, having developed and worked with our partners who developed those systems, we're now thinking of what we might contribute to the Act 30 initiative. And this is very relevant to really any country that's pursuing 30 by 30. First, there is a rich collection of geographic information which is already organized in the ArcGIS Living Atlas of the world. These are data sets from the most authoritative, best available providers, things like protected areas, terrain, ecosystem data, land cover, population, terrain, hydro, and marine data sets that can be brought together really quickly anywhere in the world into a national conservation atlas. That atlas would need to be enriched with the data from those countries, whether it's with NGOs or with governments. As part of Act 30, we're focused specifically on empowering Indigenous peoples and local communities to do their own mapping, maintain their own data sovereignty, and then share as they see fit into these national reporting procedures and dialogues. Once that collection is as authoritative and accurate as possible, then there are many capabilities of GIS systems that can be brought to bear, both analysis and modeling of the highest value areas to conserve, sketching or identifying which areas could be included under different scenarios, and monitoring the impact of those choices. This is a concept called geodesign that we've been involved in for many years, as well as monitoring that progress towards Target 3 in the form of a dashboard. So you can imagine, although we're still in the early stages, that some framework along these lines will result from the Act 30 initiative and are also just fundamentally available to any country pursuing 30 by 30 or Target 3. I'd like to conclude by pointing out that GIS systems are not just for national governments or the largest actors. They are highly relevant to Indigenous communities, and there's been a lot of work that's been done by those communities to leverage these tools. I'm providing 2 links here in the form of story maps, which show examples of Indigenous communities that are telling their own stories in their own voices, in some cases in their own languages, about their work in their environments to better raise awareness and recognition for their contribution to biodiversity stewardship. Thank you for the opportunity to contribute today, and I look forward to meeting all of you in person. Thank you.
We've learned about so many of the technological advances and many products that are already available through GIS or remote sensing, machine learning, what have you. And so my basic question there is, what is the bottleneck, basically, of making sure that there's more applications on the ground when it comes to these technologies? What's hindering us? We've mentioned some potential factors being the capacity building, or is it more of lack of funding, or is it lack of interest, lack of demand from the implementer side? Or so I'd like to just ask the panelists for that question. And If I may start with, let's say, Pete, if I may.
Sure, thanks, Kusuke. I'll share my brief personal perspective on one element, at least, is the idea of open source versus versus fee-based services. I think a lot of people, one of the first things they ask when they want to potentially adopt a technology is what's going to be the financial the resourcing of it that way. And so open source solutions do tend to be a better fit for in some contexts. But having said that, we all every solution provider needs to resource their own work to provide the solutions. And I think it's true to say that the more custom solutions that do involve customization and paying for people's time, they often are a better fit to the exact context. So I think there's a trade-off there, but I think that the whole idea of open source tools and collaborating on such tools to make them more widely available is a strong proposition.
Thank you so much, Pete. Maybe can I ask Dr. Donald next, Donald-san, for your views?
Thank you, Kosuke-san. Yeah, I do believe from the perspective of using drone technology, that capacity building is really important. Disseminating how the technology can be applied by the people on the ground. Well, we also use open source software, but even open source software could be technically also challenging for local communities to engage in. But I think there are aspects in technology where the local people are best suited to perform their own, and that's where education is really important. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Donald. Clinton?
I think, I tend to agree on the point of open source, but at the same time, I think it's important that it actually satisfy the customer's needs. There are other public access licenses, which is a way to sort of combine both commercial operations as well as broad access to information. And when it comes to conservation data, I think there's a variety of tools that are available, but then the real value is going to be in the processing of the data and disseminating that. A good example of where you see an interesting hybrid of that is with, as I was mentioning, my experience with Google is with Google Maps, right? No one's paying to get access to Google Maps, but it provides a tremendous amount of value. And then being able to integrate other data sets with an interface like that, where it becomes very easy to direct people where to go, for example, to do plantings or where they need to do surveys. And being able to leverage some of those tools, I think will make it easier. The other thing we all have to keep in mind is just like the question that I popped up on the screen, if you ask too many questions and have too many options, it causes paralysis. And so we sort of have to spend the time, as I think Peter mentioned early on in the discussion, working with the groups to really understand what are the 10 questions they're going to ask. And then let's just provide the solutions for those 10 questions rather than having them to ask and define what all the parameters are to get the answers to those questions. So understanding the user, making it easy for them to get access to the data and standard tools that they're familiar with, and then negotiating data licensing rights that allow for broad distribution.
Thank you so much, Clinton. I love the way that you just mentioned the needs for the importance of the open source and also the need to not to be able to use all that data for people to understand at the demand side of what these data is for and what can be applied from there. And we need to really streamline our focus on what are we using that particular data set for what purpose, and what kind of future are we trying to realize out of that. And so I just want to turn to also John, who also really nicely mentioned the similar activity in a way called stakeholder engagement using data. So which I think was really a rare but really important combination to see for this applying data. And is that so? Like you mentioned in the presentation, John, you mentioned how there are so much data available. Like given all the technological advances, we're getting so much torrents of data day to day. And but when it comes to the end users or the stakeholders, it's really hard for them to, first of all, get a grasp of. So what are we expected to understand from all these information, all these data, right? And what kind of actions can we take towards these things? And you rightly had through those interactive visualization maps showing how the priority conservation areas. So I'd like to know more about your expertise and experience there, John, with liaising with external stakeholders on the use of these data for conservation. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Kasuke-san. Good evening, everybody. And that's a very fair question. I think the biggest challenge for us in Oceania is, I think 99% of our jurisdiction is ocean. And you can see, like in terms of satellite mapping and drone mapping for forestry and all, like there's a lot of it in terms of context. There's so much material that you can get. But as you start to move away from the reef edge and you make your way into the deeper parts of our ocean, to the edges of the EEZ, you tend to find that there's not much in terms of expertise or data in that case. So you have to resort to bridging the gap with regional data sets such as sea surface temperature, ocean chemistry, and so forth. But I like the points that all my participants and all my fellow panel members had highlighted in terms of tailoring your product, looking at things such as open source and licensing. What we've done is we've managed to bridge this gap by starting with open source, because it allows for users to at least have a baseline in terms of accessing the data. As you may know, and most of us in this forum will understand, is a lot of times licenses are often project-based, and once the project expires, the data sits. So we always start with open source, and if you have licensed software, it's always nice, and you can train. So we go dual operation in that sense. I think the other part is that was highlighted as well is tailoring it. You saw one of my slides in terms of the Excel sheets, the biophysical placement guidelines. Tailoring it to your audience is super important. I think it was mentioned earlier, and you have a full slide of guidelines, Excel sheets, and so forth, but you lose your participants if you don't simplify your product. So a 3D model that's rotating will definitely 100% capture the audience, and then you can explain in terms of what you're representing when it comes to achievements of your MPA, so to speak. But it's been a growing and learning process, which IUCN's been part of, and we look forward to collaborating with everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, John. I'm sure it's a very challenging but also a rewarding journey for the use of application for MPAs in Oceania. So congratulations to your efforts on that. And I also noticed that there's a question which I assume which has been kind of answered or at least mentioned in our panelists' responses. But let me just read that. So it says, how to combine spatial with UN spatial data? Any example of project that combine it? And I am not really sure which particular data that this participant is referring to, but from the limited context, is there anything that one of our panelists could respond to for this?
I think that, just to clarify, I think the question is how to combine spatial with non-spatial data rather than UN spatial data.
Okay. Yes. Thank God we have the experts here. So, Pete, do you want to take on that?
Yeah, I mean, just briefly, I think this is obviously a very context-specific question because there, you know, the context for spatial versus non-spatial data are as diverse as the data itself. So I think in the conservation world, a good example of where spatial data has been very effectively combined with non-spatial data are on things like the red list and the green list, and these listing exercises where it requires spatial data in many aspects of an assessment to provide, you know, evidence of certain distributions, that sort of thing. But it also requires those listing processes require the expertise of specialists to weigh in and take a huge range of data, including spatial and non-spatial data, consider it together to apply final, let's say, conservation, you know, status indices on various things. So, yeah, I mean, I think Esri, a lot of Esri products, I think, do a good. Esri's been a pioneer in combining spatial and non-spatial information in many contexts. I think, and then I'll just finally mention the open standards for conservation are another good open source system that has a tremendous amount now of really practical guidance for users, especially in the conservation context, of course, on combining spatial and non-spatial data. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Pete. And since that, thank you for mentioning the IUCN red list and the green list standards, which is, yes, as you rightly pointed out, trying to more and more tap into the technology, cutting edge technologies to streamline its work. And so now that, given that we were unable to fully introduce Esri's work, may I, Khalid, would you like to say a few words about the green list and its application with about our collaboration with Esri also, please?
Thank you, Kusuke. We have
Sorry. As I mentioned very briefly in my presentation about the collaboration with Esri on developing integrated dashboard. And what we are doing is we are partnering with Esri to develop this integrated dashboard to bring in information from the local and indigenous people and local communities also, which play an integral role in advancing 30 by 30. So bringing that information, which is of the remote location, and as Pete said, bringing some of the unclassified information, basically non-spatial information, which is through the green listing quality of the evidence, looking at some of the governance, looking at some of the structures of the management effectiveness, also looking at then combining it with the spatial one, which is related to the component 2 of the green list, which is area and design, and combining these information to really see how this can be tailored and monitored to produce a successful conservation outcomes, which is really what is required by the green list. And in terms of that, also constantly how we can then monitor these areas and ensure that the distribution of natural resources also is done in a fair and equitable manner. Also looking at the distribution of the ecological, natural, and cultural values are also preserved in the longer term. So all this data is through the different thresholds and the values, considering all of those is quite a complex data, big data sets. If we look at the way IUCN is planning to really go across the globe with the green list, already in Asia, we have got close to 50 plus sites already engaging with us. We have got globally 600 plus sites which are engaging at various stages. We have got 60 sites which are already achieving the green list standards. Now, as this data set will grow, this will be much more complex data to really handle individually. So bringing these kind of geo-enabling technologies will really enable us, and not only us, but also to take decisions on the ground in a more effective way. So allowing the practitioners and the managers to really take evidence-based decisions, and for us in the policy and conservation world to really monitor these successful conservation outcomes, which are really backed by some kind of a solid evidence and scientific data. Yeah, over to you, Kusuke.
Okay, thank you so much, Khalid. And I think that was a really good wrap up, not only for the session, but also for our way forward as well, given that we've learned so much examples and so much potential on how to apply technology. Right, so I just want to thank all the panelists and speakers again for their for sharing their work and for the nice Q&A we just had. And so maybe a good round of applause virtually, albeit virtually from everybody here would be great. And also as a concluding remarks, I would like to hand over to Mr. Rakib Al-Amin, Head of Program Management at IUCN Asia. Rakib, over to you.
Thank you, Kusuke. Thank you for the panelists and the participant for an exciting session that we just finished. It gives us a wide range of views and ideas and examples of how technology can be used for conservation, not only conservation, but also planning for natural resource management. We heard from Peter, from Donald, from Clinton, and common thing that came out from all the presents, from John, that the capacity building is a centerpiece. There are a lot of technologies available, but technology for whom, technology in what context, how it can be contextualized, how it can be visualized is very important, and how it can be used. The end user part is quite complex and need to be understood. End of the day, the use of technology is supposed to make the decision making easier, is to enable the decision makers and the stakeholders on the ground accessible. The data becomes accessible to them so that they can take more meaningful decisions. That's the whole premises of using this technology, and to enable that, capacity building is the key. Another part that came out quite strongly is a visualization, like what we've seen in the MPA planning from Pacific, is how the data is presented, it visualized. It all depends how it will be perceived and accepted by the end user. And also there's data access. I think data retrieving and data, how you preserve those data, these are also another important questions. I have seen in my limited experience in using remote sensing by different departments in South Asian countries is the retrieval and depository of data is a big issue. And most of the cases is are project driven. Once the project is over, license is over, then and the capacity transfer, that is also become quite an issue. Unfortunately, we couldn't hear the last presentation, but Khalid made a good summary of what the partnership between ESRI and IUCN. And we will want to also have a display of ISRI and the partnership presentation in our upcoming Regional Conservation Forum. So this series, I mean, this is not the first, or this is not the last. We're going to continue this kind of a series of discussions between the users, service providers, and the policymakers. And the next one that we are going to organize during the Regional Conservation Forum that is happening between 3rd and 5th September in Bangkok, and where we expect that ISRI is coming, and we definitely want all of our participants, all of our panelists today to share their experience in the use of technology and how we can make this technology for a impactful outcome for our conservation. This is and another part is how technology is also becoming complex. So again, there's capacity building issues that came out quite again and again in all of our participants, all of our panelists and discussion. And I just can give you one simple example from our recent work in Bangladesh. So Forest Department, with the help from IUCN, tagged an saltwater crocodile. I think this is the first time in South Asia. They released in deep inside Sundarban, but the crocodile swim about 100 kilometers upstream and end up in a village. And it was completely unknown data and unknown science. So it has opened up new investigation. So this is a simple example of how technology can be utilized. But the challenge is again the licensing and of course the pricing of those tags. So yes, it is very good. Yes, it is bringing new dimension in terms of management, but continuation is a challenge. So with capacity, I would also like to add the pricing and the accessibility of such technology. We'd also discussed, panelists also mentioned, is open access resources like Google Map, how it is useful and how it can be plugged into another platform, which can open up new opportunities. But also, I think Clinton was mentioning that analysis by paralysis, how to keep the technologies simple enough for the decision makers, for the end users, so that they can use it more impactfully. With that, let's finish this very interesting session today. And thank you very much, all the panelists, for your time, and all the participants for your valuable participation and comments that you have posted on the chat box. Thank you very much. And thank you, Kosuke and Khalid, for organizing this.
Thank you so much, Rakib. So with that said, I would like to have the honor to pronounce that this webinar is successfully closed. And please follow us, IUCN Asia, on X, formerly Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn for more information. And like we've said at the beginning, we'll be posting this video recording and with some edits as necessary on our YouTube channel. So, and which will be, of course, shared through our social media accounts too. So please be on the lookout for those, and please stay updated. So we would love to see you again in a similar session or another engagement activity in the near future. So thank you very much.